Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. We welcome Brian Ostroff, President and Director of Arianne Phosphate. He will speak to us about Arianne's large Lacapol phosphate project in Quebec. Brian, you will have 15 minutes, and then we'll have a 5-minute Q&A at the end of the session. And attendees, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A link below. Take it away, Brian.
Great, thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone, for giving me a little bit of time to hear this interesting story. Just so you know, phosphate cycles, ag cycles, tend to be pretty long cycles. The downtrend lasted 2012 till pretty much the end of 2019, so 7+ years. Right now, we've been maybe about a year and a half into the turn, but with this being a whole new bull cycle, I think there's quite a bit more to go. I will be talking about forward-looking statements. So what is phosphate? Phosphate is one of the 3 macronutrients used in fertilizer, nitrogen and potash being the other 2. Excuse me. With regards to that, investors sometimes really do glance over the fact that, oh, well, all 3 are used for the same thing. And yes, the prices tend to trend together, but they don't really do enough digging and really kind of understand why it is and which ones are going to give you the alpha. So 85% of the world's phosphate does wind up in fertilizer, but we are seeing an expanded demand for specialty applications. You know, one such application being lithium iron phosphate batteries. So, you know, today we are here at the Green Energy Conference. And just to expand on that a little bit, lithium iron phosphate batteries are batteries that here in North America and Western Europe, we're just starting to become acquainted with. They've been around in Asia for a while, and really have just started to make news over the last year as Tesla had announced that all their Model 3s in Asia are going to use these LFP batteries. And Volkswagen a couple of months ago had said that they are looking to use LFP batteries for all of their EVs in Europe. Now, this is important to understand because, you know, not all phosphate is the same. So, you know, when you're talking copper, if you dig it out of Arizona or Indonesia, that stuff is all the same and all trades at the same price. When it comes to phosphate, they're not all the same. And you can really get differences between the geologies. Now, most of the world's phosphate comes from sedimentary deposits. And by most, I mean well over 90%. Now, the problem with that is in sedimentary deposits, you have a lot of other bad elements mixed in there, namely radioactive elements and heavy metals such as cadmium. Now, of course, first and foremost, you're primarily dealing with food, and you know, goes without saying, you don't want radioactive elements or heavy metals when you're talking about food. And the EU has recently put in rules regarding cadmium limits in the phosphate that comes in. Now, Arianne is fortunate enough to have an igneous deposit. There's only a dozen of them in the world. And that makes a very, very high purity concentrate. So we don't have any issues with the heavy metals or the radioactive elements. As well, it means that our product that we make is much purer. So going back to the LFP batteries, as you might imagine, the phosphate that you require for these types of batteries, you need a very pure phosphoric acid that you know is much easier to produce when you're starting with a good quality phosphate concentrate. The other big takeaway is, you know, gold trades at the same price everywhere in the world. You know, when you talk about phosphate, the level, the quality of the concentrate will command a higher premium. So in our case, our stuff will sell for about a 50% premium over and above what benchmark is. Now, the phosphate market As I said, it will differ from some of the other markets, nitrogen and potash. When it comes to phosphate, look, the exciting part is, the opportunity is, basically most of the world is short. Here in North America, we're in deficit. South America, we're in deficit. Western Europe, deficit. A lot of areas of Asia, deficit. India is the world's largest importer. China, when it comes to phosphate concentrate, looks like it's going to be heading towards deficit over the next few years. And unlike perhaps some of the other more economically sensitive commodities like oil, like copper, when it comes to phosphate, demand grows every single year, regardless of the economy or the markets. So we're all short. We're getting shorter, and so where does this get made up from? So Morocco is the world's largest producer of phosphate, but the Middle East and North Africa, by and large, counts for all of it. So when talking about Morocco, look, it's a good address in a questionable neighborhood. Tunisia used to be the second, but Arab Spring has turned things so that today they're now an importer. So over a 10-year period of time, you had the second largest producer of this now becoming an importer. Jordan, Algeria, Egypt, like, we need to understand that phosphate that we need, whether it's for applications or mostly for food, we are reliant on the Middle East and North Africa. So when it comes to the business of phosphate, 85% of the world's phosphate mines are owned by the guys who make the downstream product, the fertilizer, the phosphoric acid for batteries, what have you. And like every other business, when you are not fully vertically integrated, your profitability is challenged. And one thing that we've seen over the last cycle is guys who did have surplus phosphate concentrate, phosphate rock, have made a decision to expand their own downstream operations rather than sell that phosphate rock to someone else. Perfect example, Morocco. Morocco chose to sell less phosphate concentrate to Mosaic, because Mosaic would buy that rock, make the fertilizer, and sell it, for example, to the farmer in Nebraska. You know, Morocco's view was, why don't I just make more fertilizer and go directly to the farmer in Nebraska? And that led to a whole trade war, tariffs, etc. But the point is, the guys who don't have that 15% that's not vertically integrated, that's going to become harder and harder and harder to get, which is what puts Arianne in such a good position, because Arianne is projected to be the only large-scale provider of independent phosphate rock coming on stream within the next few years. So, you know, we have seen pretty drastic moves in the price of phosphate and the price of fertilizers. You know, most people, I get it, don't closely pay attention. I always say, I get it, gold is sexy, oil is sexy, but you know what? I can't eat gold, I can't drink oil. This stuff matters. It does matter environmentally, in green, in food. And so, you know, what we have seen is a pretty decent move off of bottom. And what caused that? You know, the cure to a low commodity price is a low commodity price. And for 7 years, we've had the price of phosphate fertilizers going down, going down, going down. And so what happened was no one expanded their operations. Arianne was really the only developer to move forward during this period. The explorers stopped. And so as supply is remaining constant, as I said, demand grows and grows and grows. And so you get to that point after 7 years where you get that pop and you start to play catch up, and all of a sudden supplies are extremely tight. I'll mention one other thing. You know, if you look, USM2 was about $8 trillion the last time that the ag prices had put in their last cycle high. Today, we are roughly at 20 trillion, 2.5-fold. So we've seen a lot of commodities go to all-time highs. We've seen equities go to all-time highs. We've seen real estate go to all-time highs. I think you would be kidding yourself to believe that things like food are not going to go to all-time highs. Fertilizer going to all-time highs. And so, we're seeing continued demand. We're seeing great farmer affordability. We finished 2020 with the farmer in the US having his strongest affordability since 2003. And so why is the farmer in such great shape? And of course, his ability to pay these ever higher prices of fertilizer, and that's because of grain prices. So, once again, if you take a look, the grains have had a very nice move, but we are still off of last cycle's high. And one of the things that is continuing to drive demand for the grains, of course, population growth, animal feeds, but we are definitely seeing things like ethanol, biodiesel, and so you're getting this increased demand. And in fact, about 2 months ago in Brazil, which uses soybeans for their biodiesel, the Brazilian government wound up dropping the amount of soy in that biodiesel from 13%, allowing it to drop to 10%, just as this overall shortage, and again, incredibly strong pricing, which we're continuing to see, and you do see it through. I mean, if you have higher corn prices here in North America, it means higher ethanol prices, which means higher transport prices, which means the truck carrying that corn, which is, almost twice the price, that costs more, and all the way through. So, that's a general sense on the macro. And in the next few minutes, let me quickly take you through Arianne. So our Lac-Apal project, we are in Quebec, obviously a great jurisdiction, especially in comparison to the Middle East. As you can tell by that yellow dot, our infrastructure is there. We have a life of mine supply agreement with a hydroelectric dam, renewable energy, environmentally friendly, extremely well priced in Quebec. Oversized haul roads already in place. We don't have to cut the trees or build the road. We head down to the Port of Saguenay, which empties into the St. Lawrence. The only thing that we need here is a loading facility built on the North Shore. All the port's loading facilities currently are all on the South Shore, but that has been permitted for. The resource is extremely large to go with how pure it is. Our feasibility study had us 26-year life of mine, 3 million tons a year. That is very big. We've done additional drilling since. Today, we're at 50 years, and as the picture will show you, we are the world's largest. We make the purest concentrate, and we are in the safest jurisdiction. So really, at the very least, if you're going to take one thing away on Arianne, largest, purest, safest. We are fully permitted, shovel-ready project. We've got our ministerial decree. We've got our collaboration agreement with the First Nations. Since our feasibility study, a lot of work has been done. It's all sitting in our data room. The project has gotten even better on these various counts, but let me highlight the ability to have taken costs out. Today, we are projected to be the single lowest cash cost provider of phosphate from an igneous mine, and the bottom 10% of all phosphate mines per nutrient value. Again, once again, our stuff is very, very pure, can be used in anything from regular fertilizer to food, pharmaceuticals, battery acids, all the way through. Our transportation plan has been modified. Our truck trailers have been redesigned, allows us 20% less trucks on the road. We are looking to use biodiesel in our trucks. So once again, very ESG friendly. We have signed offtakes. Ultimately, that is what's going to unlock our financing. And with that, once we get a couple more offtakes, I've already received my indications of financing of the debt from the banks. Now, you, the investor, where's the opportunity? Tree falls in the forest, no one's there to hear it, it doesn't make a sound. So our market cap was $160 million the end of January. Back then people cared about fertilizer. We had analyst coverage from 5 houses. We hadn't fully drilled this off, no economics, no permits, no collaboration agreements, no customers. We have that all now, but of course into a declining environment where no longer any coverage. As we got better and better, fewer and fewer people cared until here we are into 2021. People have recognized what started to go on, and there's just not that many names. So today we're sitting with a $75 million market cap, half of what we were, but today we are fully permitted, shovel ready, world's largest, purest, safest, NDAs in place with a lot of the major fertilizer companies. As much of a mystery as I may be to Bay Street, I can go to any fertilizer conference in the world and everyone is going to know who Arianne is. So, that is our cap table. And I see, Tim, you've come back on. I'll kind of turn this over to questions now.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian, for the presentation. And a reminder to listeners out there, you can submit your questions through the chat at any time. We do have a few questions already. First, how much of the financing do we have left to accomplish, if any, to start building the mine?
Okay, great. So the CapEx is projected somewhere around 1.2 billion. I've been indicated, as I said, about $1 billion in debt. We will run obviously a negative cash flow while we're building. So I'd look at a CapEx of about 1.3. With $1 billion in debt, we are in conversations with some royalty guys, as well as getting some upfront payments on offtake. So really, it is the offtake that is going to unlock that debt. I will mention that most companies, single asset development companies, when they announce that their full financing package is in place and they're ready to break ground, they usually trade to 1x first year's projected EBITDA, which in our case would be today, at today's prices, roughly $300 million US. Again, we are a $75–80 million Canadian market cap.
Great. Another question, this one's kind of specific about kind of the stock recently, but what happened a few weeks ago? I guess 7.5 million shares traded in the market. Any insight on that?
Sure. So, and actually, I'll mention a couple of weeks before that, Arianne did close on a financing of which Red Cloud was part of, along with PI. We raised $5.75 million at 50 cents. Now, I will say that with that amount of money, we don't have to come back to the market until construction financing. So no issues with potential dilution or what have you. That money will last us a long time. With regards to the block, so there was a fund that did have a large redemption and they needed to sell some of their holdings down on numerous of their names, I imagine. But fortunately, the demand from the financing was really strong. Most of the institutions just did not get anywhere near what they wanted. So they were very much happy to take the other side and fill up on what they couldn't get via the financing.
Great. And finally, kind of open-ended here, but a good closing question. What are the next catalysts for Arianne? And what is a realistic time frame to production?
All right. So, look, as our path forward here is to continue to have conversations with off-takers. Those off-takers are guys who need the stuff for fertilizer. Again, when it comes to batteries, to be honest, the whole battery thing caught me a little by surprise with the phosphate. The battery guys came to us. So a lot of our work right now is centered around getting that offtake in place and our financing in place. That said, again, 85% of the world's phosphate mine production are owned by downstream guys. We know some big guys that are short. So, I think a realistic time frame, hopefully within the next 6 to 9 months, we can get what we need done in place. And the build is projected to be about 2 years. But again, historically, when a company announces that its full project financing is in place, they usually will trade to 1x that first year EBITDA immediately, and then make its way higher as the project gets closer to completion. But for us, it's a 2-year build.
Great. All right. Well, that's about all we have time for right now. I want to thank you again, Brian, for the presentation, and thank you everyone out there for your attention and for your questions.